So welcome to everybody who is going to see this interview and this conversation today. We are in the part of Pleasure School 2023. I'm really excited today to be here with a teacher, a colleague, a friend, who actually I was remembering that I invited you, Melissa, to the Pleasure School last year when we still didn't know each other in person. And that you said, oh, I can't because I'm in a retreat. And I was, okay, yeah, sure, go for your retreat. That's important. Maybe another time. And then I met you on the streets of Costa Rica because I was going to that same retreat just like 2 weeks after you. And now 1 year later, we are here. It's an honor. I am so grateful because, yeah, I really wanted to have this conversation with you in this pleasure school. I think like you are the teacher to have, and thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Yeah, it's a full circle moment to be doing this together. And I was just also thinking about how you were my first Yoni massage that I ever gave. So that's also super special.
Yes.
And yeah, we had some good adventures together in Costa Rica. So I'm to be here in the full circle moment and to participate in the school of 2023.
It is, it is a free school, online school that goes over a week and has got many classes and Instagram lives and so on. And it's inspired by when I started studying with Laila Martin, that I was so touched by all the information and I wanted to give back to the world. I wanted like everybody to know and have the opportunity to study and have this kind of classes and so on. And then while I was studying with Laila, I did my first pleasure school, virtual pleasure school for free. And my heart was lit on fire, and it still is for these practices and also for, giving free content to reach people that wouldn't get to it if not. And you do so as well. Like every Instagram post of yours is a teaching, is a deep offering. It's an honoring of the goddess, everything I see of you. So I'm really happy and grateful that you're taking this time. And of course, we could maybe talk about the Yoni massage later on in this conversation and interview.
Yeah, for sure. I love that.
So for people who don't know you, and I know a little bit, and I'm really looking forward to see what life and where life brings us together in the future as well. But just for now, could you tell us who you are and what brought you to your offering to the world, which is so related to all the kind of Venusian pleasures that are available for women and also men?
Yeah. Who am I? I'm from and born in England, south of England, near London. Well, I was born south of England, and then I grew up south of London. And where to begin? My deeper journey began with Tantra yoga when I studied in a school in Ecuador called Durga's Tiger School. And this moment happened for me. I tell this story a lot, but seeing as your audience is new, I was living really out of alignment and living with a lot of coping mechanisms and taking a lot of drugs, partying a lot, and had a really, really severe eating disorder. I had both anorexia and really severe bulimia. And around this time, which I think is 2018 or 2017, I started my yoga practice really young, at like 15 or 16. My mum practiced yoga, but it was more like a sport just a way to stretch and keep fit, but I never understood how deep it could be in a spiritual sense. But I felt that calling. And so, yeah, that summer I Googled and found this amazing yoga school where they taught Tantra yoga. I didn't really know what that meant at the time. And but I just felt the calling. And they also taught shamanism, and we studied also with local shamans and medicine women. We did temescal, we did plant medicine, and it was my first time really doing deeper healing work. And just before the training in England, I had a really big car accident that actually nearly took my life. And it was like a pivotal moment in my life where I really looked at myself. I could see that I was destroying my body and I was really sick. And it was like one of those moments where I really felt like, okay, now I have a choice. I can keep destroying myself and quite possibly kill myself through this way, or I can try something new. And I did the yoga training. I'd already booked it before the car accident, so it was like life was just like ushering me and on the way. And in that training was like my first understanding that I had trauma, even understanding that word, understanding of sexual trauma, understanding that and also during that time I was missing my period. I was missing my period for like just over 1 year at that point. And I believe it's multiple things. It was my unaddressed sexual trauma. It was my unaddressed family trauma, and like the fear in my body, the tension in my body, the dysregulated nervous system state that I was existing in, and then also all the alcohol and drugs and all of that. So it was like a mixture of a lot of things. But on that training in Ecuador, I first discovered this concept of women's circles, of womb healing, of like the feminine healing aspect, and it just it captivated me, and I started that of womb healing, and really just like following one step at a time, following the teachers that came up and showed up for me, or the little breadcrumbs. And in the end I went back to England. I continued my studies of my university. I was an artist, and I just felt like I loved my art degree, but I also just felt like what was more important was my womb healing and my getting my fertility back, my moon back, my blood back journey. That was like more important for me. And so I was invited back by one of the medicine women to go and do a sacred feminine plant medicine retreat.
Wow.
And I went, and after that I kind of just had, and then another medicine woman from that original training in Ecuador invited me to come and live with her it ended up being 6 weeks, but living with her in the mountains, and her family, and just being there, working on my womb healing and playing with her children and practicing my Spanish. It was really bad then, my Spanish. And in that moment I really had no like zoomed out perspective that this was really I never imagined that this is where I was going. I started to offer women's circles because I just felt like so touched by them, because I in my own journey had really challenging relationships with women as I grew up. In my school, which was like an all-girls Christian school, and then myself, I have 4 sisters. I'm a household of 5 daughters, and so when I discovered women's circles, I just felt so eager to share that with other people, to rebuild that trust and intimacy between women. So I started to share that on my journey, really also to make money as I was traveling, I didn't really have much. And I did a lot of exchanges, and I followed this journey through Ecuador into Peru, also Guatemala at some point, and then finally up to Mexico. And somewhere in that journey, I also discovered the Yoni egg, and that was like, you know, obviously you work with too, and that was like my kind of beginning of, well, I think there were many stages in which it came in, but my reclamation of my pleasure. So there was always like two parts, like more the shamanic womb healing and the menstrual cycle and like the womb part, and then there was also like the pleasure and the tantra and the Yoni egg, the Taoism. Those were kind of my two interests. And eventually I got my blood back after a lot of
that must have been amazing that day.
Yeah, it was so special. It was like so special because I worked really hard and would grieve my blood so much, and I felt like I would cry often and just like beg the universe, beg life for my blood back.
Yeah.
And I was really frustrated and I felt impatient, and it actually ended up being 3 years of that journey.
Wow.
And because I'm a big go-getter and I'm an explorer, I'm so happy to travel. I grew up traveling a lot. So I had this like determination in me, and I would just go to the next place and go to the next place, and really now I look back, I can see that, well, my perception of it is that life was giving me all of these, teaching me all of these tools so that I could then share these with others in the future.
Yeah.
And the moment that I got my blood back, I was just, wow, what a relief. And just the feeling of reverence for my blood. And I was actually in Mexico, and I remember just like feeling and looking at my blood and just, and it's a good reminder for me now, because I still forget sometimes in the present moment, but like how sacred it is, and that I never wanted to disregard it or disrespect it or shame it or pretend. And I saw it in this new kind of like magical light. And I think somewhere in those moments, I really devoted myself, like, okay, I'm going to commit my life to the womb, to blood, to sexuality. And here we are a few years later.
Wow. Thank you so much. I remember when I knew you, I got to know you, and I asked you your age, and I thought you were my age, in midst of 30, and you were way younger. And now listening to you, I feel the same, like, oh, this is like many years ago. No, this was like just now. You're still super young, and this happened so soon in your life, which
5 years ago.
Yeah. And hearing this story a little bit new and a little bit again makes me understand as well why you are this amazing teacher you are, and why, like, now I understand more what do I feel every time I read you or see you, or I see an offering that you do, which, like, please go and do the trainings with Melissa. I would love to do that someday, and everything I see, I feel it, because I've been in your presence, and I received a body healing session from you, and now I understand a little bit more why it's so impactful, because of what life gave you in your way, and how you teach about the relationship to blood as well. It makes way much more sense right now after listening to this story. So thank you so much for your vulnerability of sharing. My starts also were because of blood, actually. I started 12 years ago, and one big part of my inflection point was when I started to use how do you call it in English? Toallitas de tela. Like the blood comes to,
like this, we call them sanitary
Yeah.
Period pads.
Yes, but instead of the one you throw away, they were made of fabric, so I could use it again and again. And it was such a big awakening when I connected to my blood, and that led me to the Yoni egg, and that led me to sexuality work and to all of everything else. And it was also because of my blood that I had this awakening and this change in my life when I was at the beginning of my 20s. So blood is really wonderful, and there's a lot of information there. And I don't know why. I would love to continue there. This conversation, I think it's going to be about embodiment and pleasure. So I think it's a wonderful starting point, and I'm with you. So I think you're the perfect woman to talk about this. How can we embody our bleeding and find pleasure in something that was taught to us that is not pleasurable, that you have to hide it, and it's disgusting and it's annoying and we suffer and like continue as if it wasn't there and those sports? How can we like start with that kind of embodiment, the embodiment of our cyclicity?
Wow, what a big question.
I'm sorry, maybe too big. But we can do it.
I mean, I can ask. There's a lot to say, really. I think it all comes down to a choice. It's like, do you want to keep being in the state you're being, in the sense of contraction and resistance and hatred, or maybe not hatred, but if it is hatred towards your own self and body, like that's your choice. For me, it's really simple. Like it's complex, and in its simplicity, it's like, right now, do you want to continue living like that, with that relationship to yourself, to your femininity, to your body, to your blood? And I think most people would say no. And so then it's like, okay, then what do we do with that?
Yes.
And I think the beginning of that is really like zooming out and looking at what beliefs are mine and what beliefs are society's and what beliefs are my parents and my first partners, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever. And really, like, this is a lot of the work that I do with my clients, is like, if we're specifically looking at period pain healing, or irregular cycles, or some imbalance in this space, then it's like really understanding what's yours and what's not, what's generational and what's actually true to your soul. So in that moment, you have a choice to begin to purge and let go of the beliefs of maybe your mother, who had the idea or belief that it was disgusting or shameful, and probably because of her mother and because of her mother. And so in that way, it's a perspective. And what those mothers didn't know, mostly tainted by the Bible and biblical text and puritanical texts, which are really shocking if you really read what's really written. If you feel curious about this, you can look into Leviticus 15 and what's actually written about women's blood, women's birth, like giving birth, and her sense of impurity is really, really shocking and painful to read as a modern woman. And I always share that, like, these points were fact. We didn't have like they didn't have science or the internet. Like, the Bible and biblical sacred texts were kind of like deemed as fact. So to give that perspective, that our foremothers, also out of compliance, chose to, take on those beliefs as a way of survival and fact, a fact of their community. And so when you understand that, and then you look at your blood as the fact that your blood is what you came from, is what you were born from, it's the life-giving essence of of life, the essence of life, and it holds all the nutrients and all the magic and all the spirit and the life force,
and all the grief and all the letting go and all the memories of our womb as well.
It's like that. It's the, what's the word I'm looking for? It's all of the light and it's all of the dark.
Yes.
And it kind of depends on what your cycle is. Like some cycles, some periods I feel like I'm releasing a lot of like grief and like low self-worth things. And some of them I feel like I'm expanding and I'm going into a huge new chapter and it feels very vibrant and more in the light side.
Yeah.
And so I think
you can even read that in the menstrual blood as well, no? So you can even read what your menstruation itself is telling you, which is amazing. Like sometimes bright and shiny, sometimes more dense and deep, and the smell and the taste and everything. It's just so rich.
Yeah, so in terms of this, the same with pleasure as well. It's like our foremothers, no matter where they came from in the world, they had a very limited access or even luxury of pleasure or even understanding of pleasure.
Yes.
And a lot of like, especially in the grandmother generation and great-grandmother generation, they were mostly, in most parts of the world, there was war. And so those generations were merely surviving. And when you're in a survival state, pleasure is the last thing that most people want. When you're in the parasympathetic nervous system is the last thing that you want, or even feel access, when you feel like your root chakra is just not grounded and you feel fear and unsafe. And so it's understanding the context of all of these beliefs, I think, is a really great way to start.
Yes.
And then making the choice of like, do you want to keep living in that context? Is it applicable now? Is that what you want? And then becoming self-responsible about it, because I think it's so easy to then just put the blame on the ancestors and not actually be like, well, now I have a choice, so I'm self-responsible for how I live my life. And if that feels super hard, then my advice is to like hire a coach like us, or something like us, who can support you to be accountable for the change that you want. In terms of embodying your pleasure, in terms of embodying your womb wisdom, your cycle, your feminine nature. And then life becomes more free. There's a liberation, and everybody wants liberation. Everybody wants to feel more free in themselves, in their body, in their life, in their pleasure.
And feel like an ally, not an enemy. No, I think that's like the big switch at the beginning, to say, actually, this is not a burden. This is not oh my God, why do I have to live with this? I just want to be like in my menopause, so this is over. But to feel like my body is my biggest ally, is my biggest blessing. And actually, I'm Wonder Woman, and my superpower is that I ovulate and that I'm fertile and that I have my blood, and every part of the cycle like has another new opportunity. And that's a big change, to go and live your life as a Wonder Woman with a superpower, or with like as an enemy, like my body doesn't do what I want and it's like annoying. I mean,
like even the simple way of that classic study of when people talk to plants and they talk like bad words to plants, and then they talk beautiful words to plants. The bad word plant always dies in all the studies. And then the plant that you talk beautiful, positive affirmations and words to, it always flourishes. So like applying that to yourself, how do you think that your body and your yoni, your vagina, your heart, your breasts feel if you're constantly talking like badly to them? They're not going to be in like a healthy state of existing if you talk in that way. So again, it's a choice.
Yeah. I really recommend that people work with you, especially regarding womb and menstruation and femininity. I adore how you communicate about this. For me, for my path, I've been there many years, and right now I went a bit away, at least in communicating these things out loud. They feel really routine to me, and I love it. And sometimes I have to remind myself how lucky I am to have all of this pleasure practice, womb healing practice, connection practice that I do on a regular basis. But right now, I'm not teaching them so much as a few years ago. And it's really important that you do so, and you do in such a wonderful way. And today I would recommend you to go and study and hear about all of this. I don't know if maybe I'm going to go back to talking about out loud about so much about womb and menstruation. Maybe yes. Right now I went more to them. I studied men's coaching, and I'm like fascinated. As years ago I was fascinated about femininity and womanhood. Right now I'm like in the era of, oh my God, how amazing to have a penis, and let's talk to men and let's help heal men. So like it changed a little bit, but the attraction is still there. It's still a present moment. It's still like every day. And that's why also I'm happy to talk to you because you embody it like every day, I think every cycle. And
I agree. I also feel the same as you. I don't feel so passionate about talking about the menstrual cycle and menstruation as I did in the past. Now I'm super focused on sexual awakening and orgasm and pleasure and embodying pleasure. Like that is really my current obsession, passion. And I agree with you. Like it's so part of my life, especially around cyclical living and being connected to my womb. And really, I don't really in general, I only really I don't work with beginners in my work. I work with people who are already deep in their womb healing path. Because it's not my purpose to teach the first bridge. My purpose and my desire is to really go deep with like the mystical witches who have already kind of started their journey. And so in that way I also forget to share the simple things, but I also don't think it's part of my path.
It's true. You're in for the deep ride. I can feel that what you're saying. And so what are you passionate right now, and what have you been learning regarding pleasure and sexuality since the last time I saw you? What is happening over there?
Ooh, what a good question. I think around about the same time that I met you in person.
And actually, when we met, we combined both menstruation and pleasure.
We did. In context is that I gave a Yoni massage when she was on her moon. I feel at that time I actually met a lover in Costa Rica at that time. And with him, I was exploring with the practice, because we've studied, if anyone who doesn't know, maybe it's not obvious, but we both studied under the same year-long certification with Leila Martin. And at the time, I don't know about you, but I always felt like the modules that I was going through were coming up in my life. And I was working through the module around like creating safety in my body and how to embody. Well, it was like the practice was like find the things that really block you from the sexual thriving that you want. And for me, I really struggled, unless it was like someone that if it was like a new lover or something like this, because at the time I was dating. Now I have a partner, like a committed partner. But at the time I was exploring and dating a lot, and I found that if I met someone new, I couldn't orgasm with them from the beginning, and that I couldn't feel safe. I didn't have the language for it before I did this module, but I felt like I just couldn't. My language then was like I just couldn't let go. And I think in these situations, I'm sure anyone watching can resonate. Like you start to like become in your head about it, completely like obsessing about the orgasm instead of just being present. And so around that time, I met this lover in Costa Rica, and I started to learn to embody safety in the context of orgasm. And how I did that was I started to embody safety in my everyday meditation practice, like completely separate from sexual intimacy. And the two things that I needed were safety and trust. So I started to do the practice of connecting or envisioning a memory of when I felt safe, and then feeling in my body how that was. So for me, I feel safety here, like on my breastbone, and it's a very grounded feeling. And there's a specific memory that I have that is like my deepest safety that I've ever felt, I think, consciously. And I connect to that, and I breathe with it, and I allow it. And I did that in my meditation practice. And then I would connect to trust, which I feel more in my womb, like around my womb. And I think of a memory of a time that I really felt trust in life, in God, in myself. And I started to just practice this like when I could in my meditation practice. And then I took it into a self-pleasure practice. And I started to connect to that embodiment of safety and that embodiment of trust in my self-pleasure practice, and bring it into the sexual context. And then I brought it into my lovemaking with this new lover, and I felt the difference immediately, because and it was a process, but I felt the difference, because when I first connected with him, I wasn't able to orgasm. And after these practices, I had, you know, those orgasms that you remember for the rest of your life. I had like this incredible internal orgasm with him. And afterwards, obviously it moved so much energy that afterwards I just laughed hysterically for like 2 minutes, like cackling, like for like 2 minutes. And he was just like staring at me in awe of what was happening and what we'd co-created. And that really, like the outcome of practicing this. But that orgasm I will remember for the rest of my life, because it was like, wow, I finally surrendered because of this wisdom, because of this embodied wisdom. And obviously release so much energy in doing so through the laugh, because after an orgasm we can laugh, we can cry, we can sometimes purge.
Have rage orgasm
so
even.
Can come up, and that's normal as well. And I just allowed it. And what a moment. So I feel like since him, now I'm like really shortly after him, I met my current partner, and have been dipping in and out of this practice of safety, and still working on it, because I think my sense and my own experience is that embodiment of safety, when I practice it, it impacts my life in so many different ways. Not even just my relationship to pleasure, but my relationship to money, my relationship to my clients, my relationship to my partner, my relationship to life. I feel that when I can connect and feel safe and embody it, then it's like I have safety as my own resource. It's not something that I'm trying to get outside of me through money, sex, boyfriends, clients, Instagram. And it's a work in progress. It's not perfect. Like sometimes I do outsource it, especially with my partner, because he's a very, very safe person to me. But I feel that now I have that autonomy and like ownership of my own safety and trust that I'm constantly cultivating. So I feel since I accessed that, I feel like a whole different world of pleasure has opened up for me in terms of orgasm, in terms of like altered states of consciousness. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've worked on for a year now.
Wow. And it's I'm mesmerized. Can you say that? Is that the right word? Like,
Yes.
yeah. And yeah. Because actually one of the deepest thing that touched me also in the training was the being safe. And this year we started the pleasure school with the first class was about being safe. Then the second class was about the medicine of orgasm, and the third class yesterday was about touching ourselves and learn to touch others. So yeah, I feel that there's something there in our journeys and how they intertwine. And for me, the question of being safe comes up every time when I get reactive. Like when I get reactive is, what actually is happening is that for some reason, I don't feel safe. For some reason, I am attacking back because, and it also happens in partnership, it's like the perfect place for it to happen. Actually, for some reason, I don't feel safe. And then coming back first to safety, sometimes I manage it, sometimes I don't manage it, at least not so quickly. But I think it's like, it's really the base and what it's needed to be in order for us to have a pleasurable life. That's why our grandmothers in the war couldn't think about it, because they weren't safe at all being alive, no? But we still carry all of these things, and we didn't learn how to be safe. So going to assist classes and courses to learn about consent and safety and how to have conversation. That's why I think a lot of our work as well is to learn how to communicate in relationship, because it builds the safety in order for pleasure to happen. And you mentioned two things that I think could be combined. I would like to talk about that if you're up to it. You mentioned internal orgasm, and you mentioned like consciousness arising and being connected with other kind of altered states of consciousness. And I'm curious to know if in your explanation, in your way of living it, like, are those two combined?
Yes, I love this question. Before I answer those, I just want to share something else about communication. Because for sure, that epic orgasm happened because of my practice. And it's important to note, and this is helpful for me to just remember, that it's not just like one isolated practice that I did. I also communicated to that person everything that I wanted. And with my current partner, I'm constantly communicating. I like this, move there, do that. Like, I'm so vocal. Touch that, stop, I don't want that, more of this, less of this, slow down, slow down, slow down. And that's been such a good, important practice for me, because I also feel my experience with the masculine is like to constantly tell them to slow down, because they can get so excited. And I feel that there's never enough times to communicate even that simple thing. But also if someone's doing something like stimulating me in a way that's not exactly what I want, or that's not like tickling the right spot, then why wouldn't I communicate that it's not working for me, but in a beautiful way? It doesn't have to be like, don't do that, or hey. You have to like really like get into your sexy self and be like, ooh, can you just move a little bit there? Like, make it fun and playful, because nobody responds to like the finger pointing and stop doing this, I don't like this. But I think that communication is really, 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 really important. Otherwise, I don't think you can get very far in terms of love-making union. And one practice that I love is actually to start. I'm a big advocate of like practice in your own self-pleasure practice. And so one practice that I used to love to do before I met my partner and before I was at this stage of where I am now, I would use my pleasure wand, my crystal wand, or you can even just do it with your hands. And I would be by myself, self-pleasuring, and I would practice saying out loud, move there, or can you do it a little bit more like this, or please can you slow down a little bit? And like just with myself, practice vocalizing what I needed and wanted. And this was a really good segue for me to, I'm quite a communicative person anyway, but it really helped to practice before I actually did it with another person.
Yeah. Let me say the amount of safety you're talking about is the amount I wish for everybody. And I'm not there yet, like how you're talking about communicating like everything this way. I'm practicing a lot. I'm practicing. That's good. But I was in a workshop the other day where the first time, like, I guided my whole experience. Like, I guided the massage they were doing on me exactly step by step. And I couldn't stop crying because I said, like, I never, ever said what I wanted this way.
Wow,
And
that's so powerful.
yes, it's part of sexological body work. That's how the school is called for anyone who wants to look it up. So I really want to thank you to share this, because you're saying two really important things. One, I want everybody to notice how much practice Melissa has, like, in your own body. And pleasure doesn't come like, it also comes like falling down the sky. And thank you for life surprising us, like, with blessings and gifts and pleasure just being there. But pleasure is something you build, and you have to, how can you, like, I call you in my mind, I think I also told you, like, for me, you're like a Venusian priestess and a pleasure queen. I'm like, but you don't become that by just doing nothing. You become that because you practice and you do the shadow work and you do it over and over and over again, and you go to the all kind of places, and that's how you become who you're being right now and what you're teaching us about. And that's why I'm also thankful for where I am right now, because sometimes I can't even believe how far I come from who I was before, and where I'm going to get, because I'm going to continue practice for my whole life, and I'm just so happy to know that what is ahead. So practice is something that is really important of what you're saying, and also communication. Like, I just want to, like, put a highlight on those because they were so important.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's been a lot of practice, and it's like you have to want it, really. You have to want it. And I'll go on to talk about internal orgasm and altered states of consciousness now. But my pretext to that is, like, you have to want the change more than your current life. And sometimes pain is the motivator. Like, for me, before I did this work, in terms of, like, first I had to digest all the trauma and the pain and the sadness and the grief of, like, how my body was treated and how I allowed my body to be treated in the past. First was, like, the digestion of all of that. And, like, also some perspective is, like, before I started this work, my last, which was, like, many years ago, 6-7 years ago now, my last, like, committed relationship, I didn't have one orgasm for almost 2 years with that person. And my vagina was completely numb. I didn't really feel much. I never had an orgasm, even clitoral, with that person. I could have them with myself, but, like, I was so determined to grow from that, because I knew somewhere deep down that I deserved more, and I knew that more was possible. And that pain, along with the trauma that I had, was my motivator. And so it's like it takes that determination and, like, desire to get there and practice.
Yeah.
And also for some reason, I know Layla, our teacher, is also obsessed with this. For some reason, I was like fascinated and motivated by orgasm. And like, I just thought, like, in all the possibility of human life, like just the way that randomly life is, like that we can have this epic state of like bliss and connected to consciousness and such deep pleasure. And I remember reading about the possibility of having extended orgasms for multiple minutes or even longer. And I was just like, I want that. And not in a way of like, I need something to validate me, or maybe there was a bit of that, but like not necessarily in a way of like, I need that because I'm not enough. It was like, I'm always been fascinated by like stretching the human experience into more magic, into more like the mysticism of orgasm. And ultimately orgasm is a mystery, because you can do the same thing multiple times and you won't get the same results, and sometimes you could orgasm and sometimes you might not. And so I became obsessed and fascinated by the mystery of orgasm. And because I'd never had an internal orgasm before I did the Yoni egg and the crystal wand work, I was like fascinated by acquiring that within myself. And then that led me to have like incredible expanded states that I really feel. I was thinking about this the other day. This is a little side tangent, but something I didn't mention is in those years of eating disorder, which was about 10 years of really severe eating disorder, and I still have this now, but I had very severe depression. And I was suicidal and tried to take my life many times. And recently I was thinking about like what really helped me heal my depression. And of course it's so many things. It's like a spectrum of things. And I really thought like, what was the thing that sustained my happiness? And it doesn't mean that I'm happy every day, and I still have moments and periods of deep sadness, but it's definitely better than it was. And I really feel that accessing the states of orgasm that I experience and reconnecting to my pleasure was one of the pinnacle things that helped me heal my depression. Yes. Like the awakening my Kundalini and reconnecting to my life force, and like the vitality and the vibrancy of my sexual energy was actually, I think, really the main thing. Maybe also the plant medicine healing that I did, but I think the Kundalini awakening and the orgasm awakening was my touch of ecstasy that was self-sourced, that came from me, and that like connected me to God in a way that I was disconnected from before. And so yeah, I had my first internal orgasm with a crystal wand by myself. And my practice started like that. And actually it was during a period of celibacy. So it was like, that was my journey and what I went through. I went through a period of celibacy, and I worked a lot with the Yoni egg, and I worked a lot with the crystal wand. And the term that people use is de-armoring, like taking away the armor or the numbness inside my vagina, and resensitizing the pleasure, resensitizing the orgasmic zones, and resensitizing my previously numb vagina. And through certain practices, I started to experience conscious, embodied orgasm. What's it called? G-spot, G-zone orgasm. Cervical. My first cervical orgasm was with me, myself, and I.
I like all three of them.
Me and I want with my first cervical orgasms and other ones too. Like I also explored anal orgasm and one called K-spot orgasm, and then started to explore all the other spots. And for me, it was like a process of first digesting all of the pain and the numbness and the sadness that was present somatically inside my vagina, and then starting to really reconnect and be present for orgasm. Yeah. And I can go on to talk about how to be present, but maybe you want to share any questions in between or thoughts.
I'm deeply moved. And while you were talking, I remember this phrase of Rumi, the wound is where the light comes through. Mm-hmm. And again, like I'm all the time like remembering, that's why I feel like also so much in the best way, like the only way possible, no? Attraction towards you and your work, because you have lived so many things in your life that like I don't wish for anyone to live because they are really difficult even to survive, no? And from that point on, pleasure was your medicine and still is. And that is, I think that is the essence of what I want to teach as well. Like you're listening to you, it's like, this is what I believe in, this is what I want to teach, this is what I want to, as you said before, you mentioned the word devote my life to, because my experience has been way different and also really similar. And I think it's so important to say this out loud, because sometimes I still feel like, is my work, like I still judge myself thinking, is what I do superficial? I am a social worker. So where I come from is like, you have to do other kind of stuff, to make this world a better place. And I have to always constantly tell me and remind me, no, but this is what I believe in. Like, I truly believe in social work, of course. But this is so powerful that it really can change the face of the world, and it can make us more equal in our rights, more deserving of our life, more connected towards life. It prevents abuses, it prevents suicides, it prevents living a mediocre life that is not fulfilled, and we all deserve that, everybody. So it is really, really important, and listening to you, it's really, really moving. And I would love to like continue with 1,000 questions, but we are also like kind of in the time we said we wanted to wrap this up. So if
I can share about the orgasm part, and then we can close.
Yeah, I forgot. Yes, I mean you did a lot, but please we can go there. And I just don't want to let go. Like the last question after that would be like, if you could say just one thing to everybody who's going to see this video, like why allow ourselves to dive into these topics, what would that be? And then we can wrap up.
Okay. Yeah. I think the practice of embodying your internal orgasm. I mean, the only other external orgasm could be your clitoris. Well, you can have nipple orgasms and all sorts of throat orgasms and who knows what, but like in terms of vagina, Yoni orgasm, first it takes, for me, I think what I've noticed in my own practice is to be regulated. And I've noticed that is like an all-day practice, or like to enter into a state of pleasure or intimacy with another person when you are dysregulated in your nervous system. I find it really challenging to relax or experience nourishing orgasm. And then another part for me is like my whole day in little subtle ways is a pleasure practice. Like my food is a pleasure practice. The way I listen to beautiful sensual music is a pleasure practice. I dance a lot, and my whole kind of day is like a mini orgasm. Not always, but often. Some days I just want to be in bed and in a different dimension, but like in most cases, my life is a pleasure practice. And that's the important thing, because I think most people in our field will tell you that you can't suddenly enter the bedroom and expect to be relaxed and turned on and connected if you're not connecting to your body throughout the day. Yeah. And then for me, it's like learning, which I'm sure you talk about in the school or in your work, is like learning what you need to feel like your yoni is opening. If that's breast massage, if that's dirty talk, if that's like kissing your ears and your neck, or if there's like something specific that you like, or a belly massage, a womb massage, certain music could be, or maybe like
Food.
It's less. Yeah, it depends what your specific essence is, but for me, it was really important to learn what I need. And actually now with my current partner, we have a rule that he can't enter me unless he gives me a clitoral orgasm first. That is like the prerequisite for him to enter me. And he asks permission. Like he asks if I'm ready. Sometimes it's a no. But the key to entering the temple is a clitoral.
I love this. I'm gonna make a reel out of this minute because it's way too good.
He knows that without the clitoral orgasm, he wouldn't even try. Like he knows it's not even an option. So, and that's what I need. Like I know that I need that. And also for sure, there are times when I've forgotten that, or we're in a bit of a rush or something, and then I feel pain, and then I'm reminded through pain that this is not the way for me. And so it's like learning what you need as the prerequisites to feel relaxed, sensual, entering a pleasure state, so that you can be entered, and that it feels soft and pleasurable to be entered. Yes. Instead of like forcing something. Yeah. Even in the way that you're entered, like to really be connected to the subtleties of what's happening as you're being entered. And that's a whole other topic that I'm just going to put to the side and continue. And then in terms of like when you're being, let's say, penetrated by fingers, by lingam, a penis, by a crystal wand, a dildo or something, it's like the way that you can really embody your pleasure is to be present with the sensations that you're experiencing moment to moment. So what happens often is if we're in our head, then we are thinking about a fantasy, we're thinking about orgasm, we're thinking about an expectation, we're thinking about, I don't know what, a shopping to-do list. And then you're not really present with your body. And orgasm happens in the presence, in the present moment, not in the mind. It happens from the body. And so when you can be present moment to moment with, I feel a sensation here, I feel a sensation here. And if you feel that you go up and you get lost and you become unpresent, you get into your mind, come back to your body sensations. What do you feel in your yoni? What do you feel? Every moment. Then the second tool is breath. So whatever sensations that you're feeling, breathe into them. Bring your consciousness down into the sensations that you're feeling inside this can also be with a lingam, with a penis, like what you feel inside your genitals. And
you're allowed to say, I don't feel nothing. I don't feel it. You're allowed to say that.
Yeah, I also share and teach that numbness is a sensation.
Yes.
And that if you feel numbness, that is a conscious awareness of a sensation.
Yes.
It's like one of a sensation. So you can practice like embodying the sensations of your pleasure in your genitals, and that is how, in your yoni, in your lingam, in your whatever else, and that is how you can start to become more conscious of your orgasm. And then from that state, orgasm is more likely to naturally unravel. But if you're thinking about orgasm and you're not present with your sensations, then it's much harder for your, I don't know why, but it's much harder to experience an orgasm if you're in your mind and you're thinking about it. But if you're simply present moment to moment, the key is on moment to moment.
Yeah.
And you breathe with the sensations and you just keep following each moment and see what happens. It's like you enter a wave. And like, I love this, the idea of the, what's it called? The symbol of like a surfer. Because he doesn't know when, or she doesn't know when the big wave is coming. They're just present moment to moment with each wave. And they take each wave and they watch the wave and they feel the wave. And occasionally a good wave will come and you surf it. And then there will be more waves, and there'll be more waves, and there'll be more waves. And it's like expanding out into more of like of an experience than in a small event of orgasm. Because once you expand your awareness out to be like a pleasure state, then you can have multiple orgasms because you're just feeling the sensations moment to moment. And with your breath, that can also activate, like many people that are watching this will have done breath work. When you start to breathe deeply, continuously, you start to enter naturally a state of different consciousness, altered consciousness.
Yeah. And I was just still thinking about your question about the mind. And I think the answer to your question is that in our minds, we want to take control. And if we're in our mind, we'll try to control our orgasm, which is a contradiction in itself. That's why our sexuality, our pleasure, and especially orgasm is a way for me to prepare for death. Like every time I have sex with myself or other person, it's like, this is the opportunity to prepare for death. And when my mind is like, I don't want to let control go. Okay, it's challenging. It's like Shavasana in yoga, or preparing to give birth or dying. Orgasm is a way for me and pleasure practice to prepare to give birth and to die, which are like life and death, which is the same thing in a different way, you know?
Yeah.
So I didn't want to let go of that question. That was really good, I think.
Yeah, and like, what is the common denominator in all of those experiences that everybody tells you to do is to breathe.
Yeah.
It's like through your breath, through your birth, breathe. Through death is like, I don't know, but potentially to breathe. But through any like challenging or unexpected or situation when your mind wants to control, or it's uncomfortable, or there's an unknown at the other side. And orgasm is an unknown. We don't know orgasm is the same. It's a mystical experience.
Yeah.
So when you can connect to deep, like belly breathing, deep breathing into your whole body, with sound, it is very important to really breathe in through the nose or whatever breath you're doing, and breathe with sound.
Yeah,
because sound is a piece to the embodied orgasm too. Sound energy can move with sound. So when you can start to connect the consciousness, the sound, and the presence, then magic can start to happen. And it's a process. Again, it's a practice, and there's many, many stages to it. But that's kind of the first step of exploration that I'd love to share with your audience.
So I think that could be a good motivation and closure of this, I hope, first conversation we have online and record it, to say those are the first steps, and the last, like you mentioned the word magic, like magic can happen you're a living manifestation of that magic can happen through pleasure. I feel the same, that I am a living example of magic happening through this work. And I think it's a wonderful inspiration as well to say you not only heal your past, integrate and have new perspectives on your traumas, and really heal and calm your nervous system. You're also making it possible to live the most magical life you're meant to live, and use this as a manifestation practice and all of this. But this is part of another course, of another conversation for next time. I just want to thank you so much for your time, and also for, like, I want to listen to this conversation again and again, because I felt like it was the whole time like remembering, and there's so much richness in the last hour that I definitely want to remind myself of it, listening to it again. So thank you very, very much, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me.
Where can people find you? That is really important.
So my Instagram is at I am my name, Melissa Sanger.
With double S.
Melissa, double S. My name is Melissa space, but not space, Sanger, Melissa Sanger. But there's no space. Maybe that was confusing.
Melissa Sanger, to say it in Spanish for easier following.
And then my website is my name, melissasanger.com. I have a podcast called Fundamental Feminine Wisdom,
which is amazing.
And I'm having a break right now, but there's a lot of information about wombs, menstrual cycle, pleasure, orgasms,
and conversation with men.
There's a whole series for the masculine, the Sacred Masculine series. So yeah, you can dive into that. It's hours and hours of free content and information and wisdom.
Yeah,
that's it. I'm also doing a Yoni massage and womb massage training in Oaxaca in Mexico. Oaxaca in Mexico every single year at the moment. So you can also join me if you feel called to train in these sacred feminine arts with me.
Yeah. I hope to do that someday as well, again. And I recommend to all people to go and follow you, and stay close to really feel how feminine teaching can also work. Because one thing I also like about you is you take your pauses. Then suddenly you say, okay, I'm going to be off Instagram for a month, and you're off, and it works wonderfully. And that's also really inspiring to see that. Yeah, but okay, I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the people watching this interview later on, and I hope to see you, Melissa, soon in real life, and always through the internet as well. Thank you.
Thank you.